And then John, will Lori be joining us this afternoon?
Yes, I just got off the phone with her. She'll be right on.
Okay. Let's see here.
So do you see,
Yes.
let's see if we have people on the attendee side.
I'm moving over to Chris Kearney.
Yep.
There's someone on the phone.
And then the number ending in 754, if you could just identify yourself.
Hi, everybody. John Tilley. Thanks for letting me sit in.
Hey, John.
Hey, John.
Okay. Got everyone we need?
Be coming on soon.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to call the meeting of the Legislative Advocacy Committee of the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District to order. All committee members are present. Are there any, let's see if there are any comments from the public at this point.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on anything that is not on today's agenda, please raise your hand. And if you're calling in, push *9. Chair Paul, I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Thank you. All right, now we have the minutes of the last meeting, August 2021, a long time ago. I've read the minutes. It's hard to remember back that far. Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
Second it.
Okay, let's vote then.
Committee Member Edwards.
Approval.
Committee Member Malik.
Yes.
Chair Paul.
Yes.
The motion passes on a vote of 3-0.
Thank you. On to our report from the Ferguson Group.
Great, and I'll introduce Roger Gwynn, and I see Chris Kearney's also online. Roger is our primary contact with the Ferguson Group, and he'll give an overview on some of the activities to date and what we're up to, I guess, this week as well. So, Roger, I'll leave it to you. I just got back from Charlotte, so I was reminded of, as I went to Harris Teeter, I was reminded of your story about your grandfather or whatever. But anyway, that's an aside. But
yeah, be glad to share that with the committee at a later time, right? But anyway, yeah, appreciate that. And actually, Chris is going to start us off. He's going to provide an overview, and then we'll go into some of the more details here on FY23 and some of the other issues.
There we go. Well, thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you all. It has been a quick time since August. It's hard to believe it's been that long. So things are in an interesting place in Washington. We are just closing out the first quarter of the year. The election is looming large. The midterm elections are looming large in everybody's mind, but we have not shut down Washington yet. There is still a good amount of work yet left to be done. At a minimum, the appropriations process, which Roger will talk about in a minute, will be high on the list of things that they have to get done. That, as often is the case, typically gets kicked off with the president's budget being released, which normally is done the first week in February, and for a variety of reasons that I will not bore you with unless you're really interested in the sausage making of Washington, just was released yesterday. So it is already, as budgets often are from any president, but particularly when there's a bit of a divided government, which we have de facto here in many respects. The document's largely viewed as a political roadmap. It gives you an idea of the president's priorities, but in terms of the actual programs and the dollars and the specifics, it's not likely to end up in enactment. So, but it does serve as sort of the starting gun for the conversation. So that part is now underway. And again, I'll leave it to Roger to get into some of the details. We just finished the 22 process and have set that for the rest of the year. So really what kind of is left to do when you set aside the spending? Well, there is, as you have heard, we talked a good bit, spent a lot of time last year talking about, which was both the infrastructure bill, the kind of the twin pillars of the administration's Build Back Better initiative, the infrastructure bill, and then the Build Back Better bill, sort of one being domestic spending and sort of focused on social programs and environmental programs, and then of course the infrastructure piece. Well, the social and environmental program piece that made its twists and turns through the Congress. You probably heard the name of Senator Joe Manchin, who played a bit of a kingmaker on that. And for many months and many weeks, we thought, as a practical matter, the Build Back Better provisions were dead and buried, and that wasn't going to happen. We think there is a little bit of life left in that, although it looks like it's going to be pretty narrow, probably be tax credits for various clean energy related efforts and programs, which will be of some interest in California generally. There's still talk of a negotiation of prescription drugs, trying to let the government and private folks negotiate that. That's being talked about. And then perhaps some other individual things related to the extension of the child care tax credit that have been extended during COVID. And so that kind of, there's, happy to get into that later. There's a lot of behind the scenes effort to try to put something together that allows the administration and their allies in Congress to say that the sort of Build Back Better had actually been enacted, so they'll be able to talk about both. I would say we probably have till the August recess for that, and most every other effort that's out there in terms of accomplishing legislation. So those conversations continue in the background. Obviously, the Ukrainian situation, the invasion, has moved to the fore. There's much discussion about that. You've read a lot about that in the papers. That's taking up a lot of oxygen. There is also talk in the background about COVID, another COVID relief package. There is much interest in doing that. You may see that sooner rather than later. The challenge, the discussions ongoing now behind the scenes on that score they're led by Mitt Romney on the Republican side. There's a lot of desire to make sure we've wrung out and spent all of the money that was allocated last year before we talk about new money. So that conversation is going on. And so I think we will probably see for the rest of this Congress, at least, probably a certain amount of small bipartisan bills here and there. There's still talk of a kind of a it keeps changing in its name, but it amounts to a enhanced American competitiveness against China bill that has a lot of bipartisan support. So there's a lot of talk about that. So those are kind of the big piece things, but frankly, you will be here election-wise before you know it. So appropriations about what they have to get done, and so we're really just trying to move forward and make sure that they're going to try to get as much of those big things done as they can. Roger, do you want me to touch briefly on the infrastructure bill?
Sure.
Okay. So on the infrastructure bill, probably most of note to you all, one of the things that included in the infrastructure bill was roughly $8.3 billion in mandatory or guaranteed funding for the Bureau of Reclamation. That money is envisioned to be spent out over the next 5 years. They've roughly allocated they anticipate roughly $1.8 billion per year being allocated. What I've had several conversations with folks at the department and at Reclamation about this. While that 1.8 billion is an even split over each of the next 5 years, they are, because that money almost entirely was increasing existing programs and existing accounts for the most part, depending on where different projects are in the pipeline in terms of readiness for funding, whether it's a aging infrastructure of a canal or whether it's a rural water project or an Indian water rights settlement related matter, they may increase some of those accounts and bump them up and try to take advantage of that pot of money to try to accelerate completion. So they're trying to do it in an orderly fashion. They have assembled a team across agencies that is led by the Secretary's office. They have an infrastructure coordinator point person to make sure that they are prioritizing projects across accounts and across regions, make sure there is a balance as they can. But an important point here is that they're not going to necessarily allocate this money equally across the country. Their priority is to take projects and activities that are most ready to go, if you will, that are at least pencil ready, if not that, and we'll move through those as quickly as they can. So they are, yes, sir.
Is that money going to be used separate from their existing Title 16 programs, or will it be used to facilitate?
It's going to be used, well, there's two parts of the answer to the question. It's going to be used to facilitate it all goes into the same pot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But here's an important point that you may be wondering about. It is our understanding, and in fact, we've had this reinforced to us by the department as recently as last week. Just because a slug of money got put in Title 16, that is envisioned to supplement the otherwise existing appropriation for Title 16. So we do not anticipate, and there would be a furor if, for example, someone said, oh, we can cut Title 16 by 10% because it got this big boost in the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill is entirely intended to be a boost and a supplement to those existing programs.
So important for our committee to know, the directors, is that a couple of weeks ago, Monterey and One Water submitted our application for Pure Water Monterey expansion to the Bureau of Reclamation, which we assisted on the writing of that with Carollo Engineering. So that's sitting in there. You may recall that we've been funded up to about 19.6 million through the WIN Act, first couple of rounds of appropriations. And so this would be supplemental to that. There's another 10 million under the recently revised cap that we would qualify for Pure Water Monterey. So that's in process.
Did we ever,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry, just checking. Did we ever receive the 19 million?
We're getting close. It's going to come in parts. It's not all going to come at once. And we've now satisfied all the financial requirements. And we're just, so no, we haven't, but it's in process.
Okay. Sorry I don't want to derail.
No, that's good. Questions or no. And then the only other thing I was going to add to kind of wrap that up, and then happy to take questions on any of what I've said or what I've forgotten, is, and I think this is important for us too, Dave, is while the Bureau and the department have allocated that 8.3 billion roughly to be spent over 5 years, that's their horizon. The money legally is not tied to a fiscal year, and it is not tied to a 5-year fiscal window. So unless Congress goes in and makes a change, or the appropriators make a change, that money is at the department's disposal until it's spent. So it's conceivable that if there are construction projects that take multiple years, that take 6-7 years out into the future, this money is available until spent. So we have 8 billion as long as it takes to spend it, assuming the Congress doesn't come back in and decide that we don't need it anymore. And that's important because that is not always the case with programs and accounts. And it's one of the tightest ways that Congress keeps a string on money, is that they will require you to spend it in a certain year. My own view is that if they don't spend it within 5 years, or even 4, that folks in Congress will always be under pressure and they'll start sniffing around to take that money back. So I think there's a desire to get rid of it, but if it's allocated and planned for and moving in that direction, it's available until expended. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
We have a couple of other items. Do you want me to just keep going and then we can answer questions at the end, or how would you want to?
Yeah, go ahead with your couple of items, and then if you don't touch on the one that I want you to touch on, I'll remind you to.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. So just a couple of other things. One is just a little bit more details on the FY22 appropriations process. Again, that bill, as Chris said, has just been completed. It was signed into law on the 15th of this month. The package provides, again, $1.5 trillion across 12 appropriations bills, $730 billion in non-defense discretionary spending, which is about 6.7% increase over FY21. Bureau of Reclamation, one of the agencies certainly that the district is concerned about and receives assistance from, certainly did receive a significant boost. They were funded at $1.9 billion, an increase of 231 million over FY21. And again, these are funds in addition to all of those extra dollars that were provided to reclamation in the infrastructure package that Chris talked about. In the regular bill, there were some significant increases in areas, again, of interest to you, like the Water Smart programs, which can provide funding for drought-related activities, for water efficiency improvements, things of that sort. And there were additional funds certainly for water reuse as well. In terms of fiscal year 23, again, as Chris noted, the budget has just come over, and literally yesterday, and we're now in a situation where the whole appropriations process, budget process for FY23 is going into, moving into high gear. Hearings are starting tomorrow, and many of the different committees on the different elements of the bill, of the budget request. We do have, this will be the second year that earmarks are allowed, and there are some loosening of the or additional opportunities that are being made available to the House members that we certainly will provide additional opportunities for the district. One is the House members are now allowed to request 15 separate earmarks under in the 10 appropriations bills that are where these set-asides of monies for local projects are allowed. And there certainly we want to work with you to put forward a request in the FY23 process. I think there are opportunities which maybe, Dave, you would want to talk about on the fish passage areas in particular. We think there is an opportunity to get some assistance for your priorities there. Just in beyond.
Yeah, let's pause.
Sure.
Let's pause on just for a second for the directors. So if you read the weekly last Thursday, or if you still have it lying around, on page 14 of the weekly, there's a column by Chris Neely, who also covers the district. And it talks about last year's earmarks. So earmarks are fully back. And so when they refer to the $1 million that King City got for downtown revitalization, $250,000 for farm worker workforce development center in Salinas, $200,000 for commercial equipment, commercial kitchen in East Salinas, and $400,000 for Monterey One Water for some of their relocation of Pacific Road Pump Station. That's the earmark program that tomorrow and at least by Wednesday, I will be preparing for Roger's group, 1.5 page description of the fish passage program under the Los Padres alternatives study. Even though we're still evaluating the alternatives are supposed to be done and a preferred project selected during either this calendar year, but certainly no later than early 2023. And so we're going to try to slip an earmark in there for Congressman Panetta's office. And then following that submittal, we'll get some letters of support by the local fish community, if you will. So that'll be our attempt to get some monies through this earmark round. We're not going to try for anything outside of that for pure water expansion or anything else, but we will be submitting a request. So we'll see where that goes. And Roger's already been in touch with Panetta's office on another item, which we'll get to, but go ahead, Roger, with looking forward. You were about to start.
Yeah, the next item was the one you were just about to mention, probably the Water Resource Development Act. We had the Water Resource Development Act is a bill that authorizes the Corps of Engineers to provide assistance to, and it principally focuses on the Corps. And it's a bill that's done every 2 years. And most of the provisions most of the programs that the Corps is involved in are providing support for your major flood control projects and things of that sort, and where they are doing the studies to develop the programs and projects, and then you cost share, you as a non-federal sponsor cost share them with them, but they're basically managing the work and doing all of the work. They have one program that's kind of out of the ordinary, that's out of their norm, which is more or less a grant program through the Corps of Engineers. Depending on exactly how it's structured, it can be an actual reimbursement program, or it is one where you're working with them to execute work that you want them to execute. But it's where they actually are managing the contracts. But either way, it's as close to a grant program as we can get with the Corps, and it provides great assistance for a whole wide array of water-related programs and priorities. Literally can be used for anything water supply related, any sort of infrastructure that you might have. But it also can include ecosystem restoration and other provisions, things that are helpful from a water management standpoint. And one of the things that these authorities can be are geographically focused, and yours is, that we've put forward is that Congressman Panetta has requested, put forward on the House side, would provide this assistance in basically just focus on the Monterey Peninsula itself, and does include a couple of special criteria, eligibility criteria for these dollars, which are provided on a 75-25 cost share basis, to include improvements to fish habitat and migration, basically ecosystem restoration, and other water resource protection and development related priorities. So it's got a very broad piece of authority, and is provided on a very generous 75% federal, 25% non-federal cost share basis. We've seen this authority used across the country in a number of different areas with great results. And it would just be another tool, another source of federal support that can be tapped over time if, and hopefully when the authority is secured. So that's something, again, will be the Senate actually was ahead of the House in terms of the moving forward with the Water Resource Development Act process, but we'll be following up with them as on the Senate side as well. But again, it was put forward on the House side by Representative Panetta, and in terms of the timing of this, we expect action on the Water Resource Development Act to occur sometime over the summer, maybe up even until September. Final action wouldn't occur until the fall, though, after late fall, after the midterm elections in the lame duck.
Yeah, and so on that subject, in my report as Exhibit 4B, the first letter in that exhibit is a copy of the letter that was sent to Jimmy on February 22nd. And then 4A, Exhibit 4A, is a summary. It's I think it's a 2-page summary or 2.5-page summary of the types of projects that would be Monterey Peninsula. So it's not Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. It's just projects on the Monterey Peninsula that might be able to use this money. And then what I failed to include is an example of a few paragraphs of actual language for inclusion in the bill that the Ferguson group drafted that would basically target, and Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, it was either 20 million or up to 20 million or up to 25 million. I can't remember the number, but it was basically an effort to include language in the bill that would set aside, up to 20 million for these kinds of projects shown in 4A, but not limited to those specific projects, to be named later, kind of regional. But we would insert the district kind of as a gatekeeper on this process, and then work with the stakeholders and try to come up with some sort of allocation, if we're successful. And so, the district's interest would be to apply some of that to either the Los Padres Reservoir, but certainly Pure Water Monterey expansion. But some of the others that I've included here are not things run by us, and not included in here is a project that escapes me that somebody brought up last week that would kind of be Monterey One Water, Marina Coast Water District oriented. So there shouldn't be any shortage of qualifying types of projects if we're successful. I think the congressman was limited to no more than, what was it, 5?
5.
Yeah, 5 of these kind of requests. And at the time we made our request, he had received none. So, hopefully this one gets in. There's no guarantee the language gets included and the funding occurs, but it's a start. And so we'll just wait and see what happens with that. And I also was remiss in the packet under the Ferguson Group's items, Exhibit 2A is discussion about the earmark process and the various types of projects and qualifying that would qualify in the committees that kind of handle them. So that was just included for your information. But those are the two things we're working on a current basis. This WRDA that we just talked about, and then the next fiscal year earmarks that we're trying to cobble together something in the next 2 days. So anything else, Roger? I guess
I think the only other thing was just which I think is in the packet too, was a bill tracker, and just would point out there are 2 bills that are not in there yet, and that the introduction should occur over the next couple of 6 weeks or so, I believe. That's the STREAM Act that Senator Feinstein is still working on, and it's a bill that'll includes funding, additional funding for water reuse, certainly, which will be of interest to you, but also ecosystem restoration, additional funding for storage funding for groundwater storage of all kinds, and certainly that'll be of interest to you. Also, there is a new bill that's going to be introduced in about the same time frame that'll be focused on expansion of WIFIA, the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, which provides access to low-cost long-term federal financing. And one of the things that again in the future may be of interest to you if this is successful is it'll make it even more attractive on an ongoing payment basis. So they're talking about extending the repayment period out to 55 years from the current 35-year period for projects that have a useful life of 55 years or longer. So anyway, it could provide some near-term some benefits there as well. But that's all.
This is almost like choreography, because the remaining things on my list was to let the committee know that unless they object, we will develop a letter of support for the STREAM Act out of Feinstein's office when that's ready to go. So that would just be the district supporting that bill once it goes. And then on WIFIA, I just want to let you know that this morning I finished editing a letter from Monterey One Water to the EPA in support of the Pure Water Monterey expansion WIFIA loan. Because we already got our application in, and now they're in review, and they're reviewing some of the financial covenants and trying to interpret what the amended and restated water purchase agreement means relative to their loan covenants. And so the district's been providing input there. So we are in front of the EPA for WIFIA funding as well. So all of these things are kind of circling out there. But again, if you think that we should not support the STREAM Act, I see no reason not to, then with hearing no objection at this meeting, whenever it's ready, I will prepare a letter of support under our letterhead. Great.
Do any committee members have anything to say, any reservations or questions about the STREAM Act?
None for me. We got to take care of the river. So
yeah. This is kind of a generic question. I know we've talked about funding possibilities in different bills, but are the eligible projects exclusively publicly owned?
They are. There's a requirement in terms of eligible entities to make the request. It has to be it has to be a public agency or a nonprofit. A private entity cannot be an applicant. A private entity cannot be the direct beneficiary of a project either that's requested by a nonprofit or a public entity. But beyond that, there are a whole host of opportunities which are reflected in that memo that provide there are opportunities for federal support for a whole host of water-related priorities and needs across the country, and certainly to be of interest to the district.
Mm-hmm. I have one more question about your legislative tracker for the district, which is Exhibit 2B in our agenda packet. The color code, you have a color coding information there in the upper right-hand corner for each bill. And maybe because I'm looking at the printout rather than online, I can't, what can you explain it, please?
Yeah, and it is something that it's a great thing to look at from the when you're online, because what it does is they're actually there are links, hyperlinks to more details on the bill, but those numbers just denote the likelihood of passage based on different stages of the bill. If it's reported out of committee, what is that's the, I think the far right percentage reflects, if it's reported out of committee, what's the likelihood of I take that back. It's actually, there's a description of it right above. It always gets us confused, but the left is the pre-floor, what's happened if the bill is out of committee but not out of the chamber, and what's the likelihood of enactment. And then in the right side is the indication of the likelihood of enactment if it's passed one chamber or the other, the House or the Senate. So it's, but there it is the tool actually, if you look at it online, click, it actually takes you into the underlying data, the underlying information, and it's can give you more details on that, the exact status of the bill, if it if it has come out of committee or any sort of hearings have been held and things of that sort.
Sounds very useful. Thank you. I will look at it online.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is pretty funny, because if you were to look at the second one and you see the green light, 81%, that's if it gets out and gets considered, then it's got a real high likelihood of passing. But its chance of getting through the committee to being introduced is only 11%. So it's kind of like you can't get to the right-hand number unless the left-hand number comes through for you.
Yeah.
So I think, Roger, is that
right? That's correct.
Right?
And it's just,
yeah.
This is and I'm sure the state folks have something similar to this, but this is at the federal level, the attempt to bring a little technology to these things and a little artificial intelligence, basically making some assumptions, some, forecasts based upon, who the sponsor is and the status of the bill. And that's really what it amounts to.
Yeah, I think the state we use Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know, Lori can speak to that, but no, they have some sort of art that they utilize. But that's great. We do. So in other words, we do have some activities going, both us independently and then us in concert with Monterey One Water. I did tell Mike McCullough and Paul Sciutto last week that it's unlikely that we, the district, will be back for Aqua's legislative conference. And it's not even 100% clear that they're going to pull it off on the revised dates. Gosh, I can't recall if it's late May. I think it's June, actually, because we don't know if COVID's going to bloom again. Fauci and the CDC are warning that the BA2 variant is going to peak again. And so if we keep cycling through this, what the legislature has done in the past is not made its legislators available for the rapid sessions and the interaction with folks. And that's, that constitutes a full half a day of the DC Aqua conference. So right now it's on, but the dates that Aqua chose are different than the dates that CASA, the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, chose. And so normally that fly-in is the same week, and we're able to overlap, and Monterey One is back with us. They're not real good dates, and this just for the benefit of my board, they're not real good dates for getting any serious discussion done on legislation, but certainly every time we've been back, the senator's office has been open to us, and the Panetta's office, they've been very gracious with their time and so forth. So normally we would go back and with one or two board members in tow if they wanted to for that, but doesn't look like we'll be back there for this rescheduled one this summer. So I think that's probably it then for us in the Ferguson group on federal. And I moved you up forward so that you can log off and go do your business because you're 3 hours difference. But anyway, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very a lot of information there,
Right.
and a lot to do now for you, I'm sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
So Roger, I'm still working on that request for the earmarks. You said Panetta's looking for April 1, even though they're going to consider these all.
He actually, I'm pardon me for interrupting, but he did just announce today they've extended the deadline to the 15th. So,
all right. Well, I won't use the 15th, but I would benefit, I think, quality wise from a few extra days. So you'll see something by the end of the week.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okie doke. Thanks, guys.
And Chair Paul, before we continue to the next item, should we take it out to the public?
Well,
To see if they have public comment on item number 2 from the Ferguson group.
yes, let's check. Thank you.
Yeah, so if you'd like to make public comment on item number 2, please raise your hand, or if you're calling in, push *9. Chair Paul, I do not see anybody with their hands raised.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, let's move on to the state legislative report.
Great. And here we have both John Arriaga and Lori Johnson available. I suspect, Lori, you're going to introduce this topic, or is that going to be John?
I think John's going to kick it off, and then I'll do the meat of it.
Okay, great.
And Dave, I hope you do make your trip back to DC, because I just got back last week for the National League of Cities that we went
John,
to.
can you get a little closer to the microphone or turn it up?
Is that better?
Not much.
How about that? Better?
Yeah, we'll lower all of our ambient noise.
I'll try to speak louder too. Anyhow, Dave, what I was saying is it was good to be back after 2 years in DC for the National League of Cities, and things are opening up. It was nice to see that. Although I will tell you, as far as the meetings there in the Capitol with the legislators, very tough. And then part of this is COVID, but I think the bigger part of it is January 6th. You can't go into those buildings anymore without having an escort for each of your meetings. And once your meeting is had, you got to be escorted out and come back in again. So you don't get very many meetings during that time. But other than that, it was good to be back there again. President Biden actually came to speak to the group on one of the days, and obviously spent a lot of the discussion on infrastructure dollars and those things starting to roll out. So I hope you do make your trip. But having said that, we're still
Hey, John, before you leave that subject, did you say that once you're in like the Senate office building or one of the representative office buildings, you have to be escorted back out before you can have your next meeting? You can't just go from...
You either get escorted back out if you don't have something coming up soon, or you might get like and have them escort you to the next building. But you know how it is. If you're going from the Rayburn building to the Cannon building, that's a long way for that escort to have to take you back and forth. We had one escort drop us off at the cafeteria for coffee and walked out, and we're going to our next meeting. We got stopped right away by security and wanted to know where we were going and why we didn't have an escort and so on.
Okay, so again, I'm sorry to drag my board members through this, but logistic planning wise, so you're saying, like, let's say, for example, once you're in the Rayburn, if you've got 3 meetings in the Rayburn, can you go from one to the other, or do you have to go out with each one?
You can, if you can get your escort to take you over there. For example, if you got something with Panetta, you call up to Panetta's office, or they'll send somebody outside the door, outside on the street, to come pick you up and walk you in. And that person's not supposed to let you go until you either have left the building or have gone to your next meeting.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That changes things.
Yeah. So anyhow,
thank you.
But again, here in California, we're faced with a lot of that too. Things are just starting to open up again. They are starting the hearings and allowing Most of the time it's just 2 witnesses. Everyone else who wants to participate will have to do by call-in. So that's still happening, but things are moving on. So since the last time we talked, there has been a lot going on. We're well into the second year of a 2-year session. We've passed, the governor's introduction of his proposed budget. That's being mulled over by the various subcommittees. We are now past the deadlines for bill introduction, which was February 15th. Some 2,300 bills were introduced, and Lori's going to go over a number of those bills that have been narrowed down considerably for your purpose and interest, and talk about that. But just in general, this legislative session, we still got a lot of the items that were carried over for last year, being climate change, vaccinations, and COVID are still an issue. In fact, Lori was just telling me a little while ago that on the vaccination issue, the truckers that have been going around the country causing chaos are on their way to California. So we'll be seeing them soon. Housing issues is big, with the eviction deadlines coming up as far as the moratorium. They're scrambling right now, the legislature, to get that extended to June 30th. So a lot of things going on there. But more specific as to water, we all know the drought that we've been dealing with, and it's not getting any better. The recent survey showed us well below what we should be at this time. We've now got the first 2 months of this year showing the driest months in this state's history. So the picture's not getting any better. So for you as an agency, you're going to have to start tightening up the belt. I know the governor about 2 weeks ago announced another $25 million going out on the drought issues, more of an education side of things. They also recently just mentioned that they're going to start looking at level 2 of preparation for the drought, and some of those could mean a much lower percentage for households as far as the percentage of water they can use on a daily basis. They're talking about the non-use of water for not so much recreational, but properties where lawn is just being irrigated for ornamental purposes. So we're going to see a lot of that, and there'll be a lot of focus on this over the next couple of months. Hopefully, out of a bad situation, we can garner something good for the district as far as any monies that might be available for your purposes. So that's where we are in general. We've continued to talk to our legislators for your area, Senator Laird and Assemblymember Stone, listening to their issues, watching their bills, talking to them about some of the local issues and so forth. So we'll continue to do that. We continue to sit in on the ACWA meetings. It's once a week. Lori and I will sit in on their meetings and talk about statewide issues and so forth. So a lot going on in the water area. And so with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Lori to get more specific about the bills we're following and so forth.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Before you have a memo as well as your full legislative tract, this is, as John said, 2,300 bills were introduced. I think I tagged about close to 80 for you guys, and with the patience of your general manager, we kind of sifted through, kind of those pieces of legislation that have more of an interest and impact to MPWMD. And just to piggyback on what John was talking about the governor's executive order, we are expecting it this week. ACWA has been working with the administration to allow water agencies to use their mitigation plans and not take a statewide approach. But as John said, the rumors are that expect to go to stage 2. In regards to conservation efforts. And so this is going to play really hand in hand in what the governor is going to fund and how much water he's going to throw at climate change, water, drought preparation, flood protection, all of these things during his May revise. It's still showing that we are in a healthy surplus. So as we said, there is going to be pots of funds out there that we're going to be monitoring and advocating on, not only in conjunction with your statewide association, but with our local legislators. So with that said, we'll go on legislation that we are suggesting positions on. And the first one, and we have seen this before, I think this is its third iteration, which is basically the water bond. To go on the ballot. This is a little chunkier one. It's $7.4 billion. As you can remember, in the past 2 years, they've been trying to do water bonds. And the great thing is the state's been ponying up the money themselves through the general fund and through reworking Prop 1 and whatnot. So, but it is still, they still want to put it to the voters. We have always taken a support position on this. Right now, Aqua is in favor if amended. We do sit on their bond work group, and there are some things that they want more money for storage and groundwater, and again, for dam safety. That has kind of risen to one of their top priorities in the last several years about the state of our dams. And so we are recommending a support position on this. The next one is AB 2811, pardon me, which would by 2024 require all newly constructive non-residential buildings be constructed with dual plumbing to allow for recyclable water for all applicable non-potable water demands if that building is located with an existing or a planned recycled water service area. On this one, we are recommending a support position. Aqua is not in favor. So what I am recommending that we do is let this go through the first committee and let them hammer out some of the issues. Not that we cannot go against the statewide association on certain pieces of legislation, but it is my recommendation that if it's not a regional or directly impacting in a significant way MPWMD, that we maybe like sit on it for a hot second till it gets out of policy committee.
Lori,
yes.
Why is Aqua opposed?
They're meeting, their legislative committee is meeting later this week, and they just said straight off that according to their thing that they are not in favor and that they're working on amendments, but they haven't even presented the amendments to the assembly member's office. So by Monday I should have what they are proposing, and I'll send that out.
Okay, thanks.
SB 1122 by Senator Archuleta. So this enacts the Central Basin Communities Water Reliability, Safe Drinking Expansion Act of 2022. And for specified services related to drinking water, and not, you can read, but not limited to, protecting state and local regional water systems located, and this is the key, located in the Central Basin from climate change, drought, catastrophic seismic change, or failure from terrorist act as other deliberate acts of destruction. We are recommending an oppose on this, and simply because this creates just a special carve out. These programs already exist in the Safe Drinking Water Program and the revolving fund under the State Water Resources Control Board. And this is a statewide issue. And for them to basically carve out and have their own pot of fund, we just think is unreasonable. Aqua is a watch and amend, and Chairwoman, I know you're going to ask. That's a political thing, because they're having one of their big members trying to do something. So basically, if there's no agreement and there's fraction within a statewide association, then they stay off the bill. Who is opposing it, though, is the California Municipal Utility Association. So they're one of our partners as well. And the only support is from the Central Basin Municipal Water District. So as I said, this is just, they want their cake, they want their ice cream, it's a carve out, and it's diverting statewide funds for a regional purpose. And, that is something that, MPWMD has never been in favor of. SB 1157, Hertzberg. Now, he's tried to do this before, and this is basically regulating the gallons per capita daily or and standard recommendations for water use. This bill's not moving as of yet, and I think this is going to be tied into the governor's executive order. So essentially, it says it eliminates the option of using the 52.5 gallons per capita daily. Now that goes in effect in 2025. We're currently at 55 gallons. So in 2025, that goes into effect. And the greater of 50 gallons, which goes into effect in 2030. As applicable or a standard recommended by the department. So basically it is negating those basically the schedule of per capita daily use of water. What they're proposing, we don't know. We are recommending a possible oppose. Aqua's working with the office. They are opposed unless amended. They kind of want to figure out what they're doing with this. And so I would, rather than, we can sign on to the letter for Aqua. And I think that would probably be a better recommendation rather than having our own letter. But I think this is really getting tied up in the governor's executive order of that he is going to have to cut not only percentages of use, but they're going to do the per capita daily use. So we're going to have to watch this one extremely close.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we are possibly in opposition is that our numbers are already so low that 50 gallons as an indoor standard is, we probably already qualify. We're at about 57 gallons per capita per day, which includes outdoor irrigation. But, we just have to look at the language. There's been a couple of bills recently that were onerous. For example, there was a bill that was proposed last session that would require wastewater discharge to go to zero in the, at some date certain in the future. And when you look at, Carmel Area Wastewater District and our Pebble Beach Reclamation Project, there are times of the year where it simply can't go to zero because you can't recover it all, fill the reservoir in the Del Monte Forest, and then there's still excess that can't be applied to the golf courses or Stevenson School sports fields. It has to go somewhere. There's nothing else to do with it. And so if you can't create a use in the winter season, it's, obviously, and the same thing with the Casserole Seawater Intrusion Project. In the winter months when they're not growing crops, it's hard to find a use for recycled water. And so going to zero is basically impossible. It's an aspirational goal, but until you come up with something, massive storage, if you will, it's kind of a, pushing the rock up the hill. Same thing here. When they come up with these standards, it's easier to get in the direction of those standards for high using communities, but for low using communities, we would have to do a lot of science to demonstrate that the difference between our 50 and 57 is outdoor irrigation. And it's just not a slam dunk. And so anyway, we're watching it carefully. But whenever these somewhat draconian standards are put into place, especially by Southern California legislators who don't really understand what's going on the Central Coast and some of the other places that have been effective, we get a little wary. So that's why it's a possible oppose, and we'll just kind of follow that one. As Lori has said, we try to stay in concert with Aqua, but it doesn't always work. So we'll just wait to see what Aqua's position is on this as well. Sorry, Lori, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. As I said, Aqua is opposed unless amended, and like the other bill, we should know what their amendments will be on Monday. The next bill is SB 1188. This authored by our Senator Laird, it authorizes the Water Board to provide grants and principal forgiveness funding and 0% financing from the SRF fund to extent authorized by federal law, which means matching dollars. By deleting in certain requirements, including making funding limited to water systems serving severely disadvantaged communities. We are recommending a support. Aqua is support if amended. They're working on with Laird's office on amendments regarding consolidation and interties and how monies qualify for that. And CMUA, the Municipal Utilities Association, is in support as well. And then lastly, our regional senator, Senator Caballero, SB 1197. This bill, she tried to do this last year, and she's really getting and committing her efforts into water innovation and technology and kind of some of the recycling and everything about water of bridging that gap. So it's the Water Innovation Drought Resiliency Act of 2022, and it creates the initiative to advance water innovation and drought resiliency at the Office for the Furtherance of New Technologies and Other Innovative Approaches to the Water Sector. This is just a feel-good bill. Aqua likes it. If there's money and that we can throw at this, it really is. We're going to have to be relying more on this for the future of water use, and so we are recommending the support. Dave, did you go ahead?
Two actually. Well, the first is a small one, and in the next to last line, it refers to an office, some agency, and what is that? What is that referring to? Where it says at the office would create this initiative, etc., at the office. What are we talking about there?
Oh, inside the state water board, I
yes.
believe.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I thought so, but I wasn't sure. And the other is that the description begins with something that sounds like it could be a restatement of a very basic principle in water law about that the water resources should be developed for the greatest public benefit. And then it goes on to talk about the technology. Is there, besides funding technology for research and innovation, is there another significant change that this bill would bring?
No, it's just for all intents and purposes, it's through the act, it's going to create this initiative within the Office of the State Water Board for these purposes. What you're reading is existing law, so that's where they're writing the bill in the code section that kind of has to restate you know, what it is and whatnot. So that's more of a legalese digest issue.
Yeah, I suspect that's probably one of the very first lines in the bill summary.
Yeah.
But, you know, like Anna's.
The restating existing law.
Yeah, yes. And they're trying to draw you in on how important it must be because, you know, water is life.
Yeah.
So even though this is just about innovation and technology, you know, they try to make it sound like it's going to save the world. So. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I suspected, but I really wasn't clear. Thank you.
Okay. So Dave, did we want to take a vote on our recommendations for MPWMD supporting and taking positions on these bills, and then I can draft up position letters for your signature, or do you want to do that at the end?
No, I think that's where we're at because the others are kind of updates on separate topics. So, so Lori outlined these key pieces of legislation with our recommended positions. A couple of them, we kind of hedged our bets and our recommended position saying, well, let's see what ACRA says. But yeah, generally just, so the way this works is I need your approval so that we're not coming to you for each letter of support or letter of opposition when they're ready. So if you generally agree with these positions, as Lori laid out, then we'll just kind of put them on hold until they're ready to receive their letters with our name on it. There's a bunch of other bills out there that affect water, and one of which I'll talk about in the next agenda item, where we may have some expertise and we may have an interest and we may have a position, but it's not really the district's need to weigh in. But these bills seem to have an impact on the district. And so these are the recommended positions. Yeah.
Director Edwards and Director Malik, do you have any questions or comments about the recommendations?
No, these recommendations will be going to the full board, correct?
No, we typically don't, because this is the role of the committee, and and again, they're just positions. If it's a specific district ask, so like when we're actually trying to either do a bill for our own benefit, or if we're doing an application for monies, and we'll talk a little bit about that under my topic, but then we often go to the full board. But no, this is the charge of the Legislative Advocacy Committee to kind of sign off on positions. We can certainly take these and put them in an information item to the full board, but we haven't in the past.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the recommendations, that Lori has offered, make sense to me, sound sensible, but at the same time, this is it's a moving target. I mean, we don't know how the bills will change. We don't know what Aqua's position will be on some of these things, et cetera. So, based on what we know now, the recommendations sound fine to me, but since we know this is all going to be changing, I would ask that that we be updated with on anything significant with these bills, anything that might lead us to want to reevaluate our position. Yeah,
we would. And also, if there was a bill that had a specific impact on us as a district or regionally with other partners, then we'd take it to the full board, because we'd need to describe what's going on. And frankly, we'd want the public to know, especially if we oppose. It's a lot easier when we support, but if there's a reason to oppose. And we've had certain situations where sometimes we support simply because we like the legislator, like Robert Rivas or Nana Caballero, when we know that they have helped us elsewhere, or they can be relied on to help us in the future, then as a courtesy, we'll put our name in, because another water district with a name on a letter can help them with their piece of legislation. But oftentimes we don't really care, except that we want to be helpful to them, because we know at some point they'll be helpful to us. But
I understand.
Yeah.
And since this committee meets infrequently, it's fine to send an update to the committee in between meetings if something significant, by email.
It definitely will do.
The 1157, somehow I wish you could bring that up to the board and the public. That bill needs to be really looked at, because I think if you speak up on that one, that would set the mood, because of this conservation that we're going into. I believe the governor last night, as I listened to the news, has put us in level 2 or whatever. So he have done that. And I think this bill right here, the public should know about outright. I support all of them, but the public should know about this one outright, because it's going to really affect us.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I agree.
Yeah, hey, Joel, has the Water Demand Committee packet been locked up yet? I don't think we've done staff notes yet. So is the agenda?
So the Water Demand Committee, it's not meeting.
Oh, that's right.
It's not meeting for the month of April. It's meeting in May.
Every other month. Okay, right. Well then I will for sure put it on that committee's agenda, and then from there we can move it to discussion of the full board. Maybe under the GM report. So.
Yeah, yes, that'd be fine by me.
Okay.
By the committee, and let them know, because like I said, the governor, I think, moved us in conservation level 2, so we'll be talking about that. Okay.
Yep. Okay, Lori, you want to go on so what I'm hearing is there's no dissent on these positions, but certainly update, especially if the bills change radically, or if something pops up that has a more direct impact on district operations. So
right,
we will
absolutely
do that. So yeah, let's talk about these three additional topics.
Okay, so this is just more for just your knowledge. So the State Water Resource Control Board, they released their water needs assessment, drinking water needs assessment in early February. This is causing quite a storm up with Aqua and some of the water agencies. So this is basically in line with the SAFER program, which is a safe, affordable funding for equitable and resilience program, as you know, was established by our former Senator Monning in the passage of SB 200. Some of the concerning proposals is they're applying all the risk assessments to all public water systems. Now, since I drafted your memo, our sources in the governor's office, as well as Aqua, has said that the board is moving away from this and now exempting those agencies that provide service for over 100,000 customers from the risk assessments. They're removing 5 risk indicators. As you can see, they're adding 8 new risk indicators. But when you start seeing the percentage of where they start talking about aerages, this is really interesting. And this is not going to so much affect MPWMD, but just, you know, of kind of knowing what's going on is during COVID, there was water agencies as well as investor-owned utilities, energy, whatever, these bills were not getting paid. The governor in July appropriated $2 billion to basically, you know, cover the back end of some of those rearages. So what the water board wants to use now is those monies that were collected by water agencies and investor-owned utilities from their ratepayers. They want to use that as a base of affordability and of their residential and ratepayer affordability. And what Aqua's arguing is, at the time, regardless of your income and whether you were economically disadvantaged, you could just stop paying your water bill and you could actually qualify. Just like you could, whether you could pay your rent or not, you could do it. You could not pay your mortgage and get forbearance. So this is that they're arguing that this is not a good indicator of a very unique and extraordinary situation of ratepayer affordability within their regions. So there's going to be a lot of pushback on that. And so we're going to be monitoring especially the risk assessments applicability to anything above severely at risk. And we'll come back to you with that. But there's going to be a lot of public comment on all of these concerning changes.
And you may ask yourself, why do we care? We don't really. Previously, it was mostly for small water systems. But for the standpoint of Measure J and knowing what we're talking about in operating a system, now that they've expanded it to more than 3,000 service connections and, you know, up to 100,000 residents, then we have to be able to talk about what these implications are, what this might mean, just from the standpoint of, you know, are we qualified to acquire and operate Cal-Am? So it's more keeping track of what's going on in the industry rather than how it would affect the district directly.
Yep. And then lastly, of course, the housing issue with condition 2.
Well, I think, did you have anything to say on drought emergency orders other than what was alluded to?
Well, yeah. I was anticipating. So, yes. Alvin was right. The governor did move as of this afternoon to level 2. Also, the executive order includes protections. safeguarding groundwater supplies, requires local permitting authorities to coordinate with groundwater sustainable agencies to ensure new proposed wells do not compromise existing wells or infrastructure. It streamlines permitting for groundwater recharge programs that will help refill aquifers when the drains come. It expedites state agency approvals for necessary actions to protect fish and wildlife where drought conditions threaten their health and survival. And it directs the water board to expand site inspections in order to determine whether illegal water diversions are occurring. The governor, this also in the comeback plan, he mentions that he's investing $5.2 billion over the next 3 years to build water resilience and drought response and preparation. So yes, that just came through what he was talking about. So yes, you're going to your level 2 of your water contingency plans.
Yeah, and we are not doing it immediately. And our level 2 is just increased water waste enforcement and public notification of voluntary conservation measures. We will be talking about it with Water Demand Committee at its next meeting, and we will also be bringing up some discussion on outreach for drought, or what we call drought reach, at the Public Outreach Committee meeting. We feel that we need to start putting money aside, but you know, we're in an odd place in that we're less resource constrained than we are capacity to produce or production constrained. So with, you know, January 1, with the water right on the Carmel River going down to 3,376 acre feet. When you look at the river's not the problem. The storage in the alluvial aquifer is currently at about 95% of long-term average, which means if you were going to limit yourself to 3,376 acre feet, there's really 5 to 6 years worth of water sitting in the aquifer in the river. So we're not really currently at risk there. Certainly the Seaside Basin with a lack of rain isn't recharging itself as quickly as possible, but legally there's no prohibition on the withdrawals other than the Seaside adjudicated step downs. And so that water's really there. So it would come down to how do we meet the shortfall? And if we exhaust the reserve that we have, about 1,300 acre feet in the ASR reserve, Aquifer Storage and Recovery Reserve, then we would start getting worried because we wouldn't be replenishing it. And in another dry year, there would be no Table 13 water rights. But where we stand right now is, you know, I hate to say there's more water than our demand, but the real constraint on our system right now is, can we get all the water we have out, given the well constraints that Cal-Am has, and the fact that, you know, they kind of knew they needed more wells and they didn't put them in place, and they relied on our wells, and now that's becoming an issue. Nevertheless, if the rest of the state is heading into drought awareness, we can't sit by and say, well, we don't have a problem. We do have a problem. I mean, we will want people to conserve, but it will not really be a true problem this year because we're not looking at reservoirs that are at 20% capacity. We're not, you know, if you go up and down the state and you look at reservoir levels now versus their long-term average, that's a real supply constraint. That's not the situation here. I mean, even last night or over the last 2 days, the rainfall totals, you know, we had over an inch. So right now we're better off halfway through the winter than we were the entire year last year. And so we want to still see what happens in March and whether any rain is forecast in April, but we are going to need to start messaging and going to voluntary conservation measures and increase enforcement. And that'll be notices to the restaurants on their service of water, notices to the hotels on linen service, and, you know, updating all of that. So there will be some attention paid, but just keep in mind, not all of California is in the same place. So just hold on to that one. Go ahead, Lori. Or I guess this next one you're going to tip to me anyway, right?
Oh yes, but so this is a continuation of the continuation of the condition 2 issue that we've been working with Senator Laird and the State Water Resource Control Board, the City of Monterey, and a host of stakeholders. But some new development has occurred. The City of Monterey's City Manager Hans Unzlar recently sent a letter to the State Water Resource Control Board. It was very succinctly worded and strong, and essentially is reiterating what we're trying to do, and that is for the state to lift the 2009 cease and desist order against CalAm, so we could basically start building homes. Now, why this we're bringing up this letter is because it found its way into a very, very popular statewide online political publication called Cal Matters. And basically any advocate or any legislative staff, consultant or whatnot worth their weight gets an email every morning from Cal Matters that does the state's big headlines. And there it said, you know, glaringly, and I had texted Dave and said, oh, well, he got their attention. So what we know, what's going to come out of this letter, we do not know, but this issue was reported upon. There were lots of comments. So I will now turn this over to Dave.
Yeah, and I think the best place to leave this piece of it is all last week I toyed with whether to call the attorney at the State Water Board or wait to see if he calls me. So I waited to see if he calls me to say, what the heck is this all about? And he didn't. At some point, they're going to have to respond here in the near term. And I think we will get dragged into it. CalAm's natural reaction is to say, let's not jeopardize our position relative to the CDO. So don't allow any more water to move forward. Our current position is we have more than enough water to not violate the CDO and to release some to housing in the next 30 months. And there's some practical limitations, things we've already talked to the State Water Board about, both regulatory staff and their general counsel's office. But it's an interesting problem that they really want to kick the can down the road. They want to see a permanent water supply. They'd love to see pure water expansion get permitted, bid documents out, and construction begin. So that would give them the comfort that there's actually going to be water, rather than trust us to say, we know there's enough water, it's really tight, but the impact of certain housing development in the near term is going to be so minuscule, it's not going to move the needle. And so we, the district, will get sucked back into that whole discussion, probably as a stronger advocate. And once again, going through the numbers with the state board staff, because CalAm is not going to advocate for this. They will advocate for preserving their dignity and not violating the CDO and not violating the adjudication of the Seaside Basin. I can tell you that when we get to Water Supply Planning Committee meeting next week, we're going to start talking about some of the problems CalAm's system has in getting water to the consumers. It's right now, the constraint is more of a production constraint than a supply constraint. And so the same thing would just further bolster their resistance at being an advocate for letting a little more water out for housing. So anyway, we will likely get involved. The other issue related to housing are the new RENA numbers, which will tend to overstate the housing needs. The water needs for housing. And we all know based on past experience that the RENA numbers, the regional housing needs allocation, RENA, are never met. That will be the subject of the Water Demand Committee meeting to talk about that because it's more of a demand issue than a supply issue. But rest assured that this can't just go the way it's gone since we first put our request in March of last year, which was the state just did not choose to act on our formal application. And so this was Hans and the mayor basically trying to get their attention, and it worked. So stay tuned on this one.
It worked, and what was the response?
None yet. And that's why I'm not sure if they're going to go. Protocol would say they need to respond directly to the mayor and to the city. But if they want to engage, then we're going to get brought in because, you know, we've got the numbers, we got the data.
Well, we ought to follow it up. Listen to Monterey One Water last night. They got a shovel-ready project probably next month for the expansion.
Yep.
I think we need, and they got a layout of how that's gonna go. I think we need to follow that letter up and say the water is coming. I don't know how far on the permitting we have got, but that's the next thing. I think there's other agencies out there trying to get recycled water, and they having problems with permitting. And what I heard the guy say last night, the project manager, hey, that's where we're at right now. And those other two agencies trying to get where we're at. So I'd just like to know where we at on permitting. We fire a letter to the state that on this condition too, that we are in the plans and we're moving to get this done. I agree with Monterey, and I'm not backing off of this, and we shouldn't back off of it. So
no,
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that in my mind, the trigger point is approval of the water purchase agreement, because we don't know what kind of shenanigans the applicant, CalAm itself, might pull, because when they filed the application for the water purchase agreement, their first round of supporting testimony was very derogatory about the source waters. They almost said, you know, please approve this project. We really need the water, but we don't think it's going to work. And then, and Mr. Tilley's on as a guest, he participated in a letter back to Monterey One Water a little over a week ago that also questioned the source waters once again, even though Monterey One Water's testimony and our testimony and multiple reports through time have tried to put that issue to bed. And so if any of these kind of things pick up steam, you know, there's a possibility that you don't have a water purchase agreement. And I believe that what the state ultimately will want to hold on to is, I don't trust you. I don't want you back in my, you know, my old metaphor, you know, don't get back in the principal's office after we've given you permission to go ahead with this housing stuff and violate the CDO. And the only way they're going to get comfort is to know that there's an actual project, not a promise of a project. And so I think, you know, the difference between me and Hans is I do believe the water is there right now for some development. I also believe these developments aren't going to get finished for 24 to 30 months anyway. So the practical limit is they're not actually going to turn on a faucet until we do have a water project, either close to being finished or finished. And also there's the conceptual issue that as of January 1st, CalAm has raised their hand and said, we're going to stick by the 3376 off the river. We're going to live within our means. And if we all believe that, then the state should say, yes, go ahead. I think they're not willing to relinquish their paternal role of saying, well, we don't believe you. I think they want to remain in that role right now until we can show them. And so there's going to be this kind of, you know, where do you say yes? And I think they're going to be more likely to say yes if we have project approval, meaning water purchase agreement approval, then and especially if I'm a state regulator and I say, wait, that's 4 months away, 5 months away, I'll wait for that increment of proof before I rule on any of this. But I agree that we do need to address it because we agree that it's there. The other issue that I have is they can't get enough water out of the ground unless we come up with some solutions because they didn't act on the known need for additional extraction capacity when they should have.
Okay, Dave, but I got you, and I know where we're going with this, but the fact is we need the water. And water purchase agreement or not, here's my point. Water purchase agreement or not, we need to build. We just need to build. And that's why I'm going with this. And we can talk about it in a week or so, but we need to get this built and quit. Callum said they're gonna buy the water. If they don't buy it, we got it. And the public gonna know about it. So let's move on.
Yeah, well, just the other thing to keep in mind about just going ahead and starting to build, the building departments can't act quickly enough to push a whole bunch of projects out the door. So we really are talking about small amounts of water. 10 acre feet is a lot of housing units. That's, that's probably in a multifamily setting, that's probably 120, 140 units. So we can have a significant impact with very little water. And that's what I think is lost on this is, you got these two co-equal state agencies that just are ignoring each other.
Dave, I agree with you, but let's move it on. We're gonna have that discussion coming up. So
yeah, we will.
Yeah, okay, this is not the end of the discussion, but just want to say, is there a way that we could informally, we're talking with the state board, get their cooperation, and as soon as we get approval, if we do get CPUC approval of the water purchase agreement, to then be able to move quickly to lift the CDO. I mean,
yeah. So at the next water supply planning meeting next week, and I've done this once before, but it's been over a year, I'll lay out what it takes to lift the CDO itself. More likely what we would get is either an interpretive letter on condition 2 that would suggest that there would be selective enforcement or selective non-enforcement of condition 2 for specific purposes, rather than a full lifting of the CDO, because it's a bigger task. And they have attorneys, and the attorneys are going to say, well, you have to follow the path, and the path is pretty clear. So I will have that out in front of the Water Supply Committee next week. Okay. And if they want the report up to the full board, which is probably likely, then we'll do that at the next board meeting as well.
Yeah, I think it probably is for the full board, but yeah, that would work as an intermediate step, the selective non-enforcement, so we get housing started. Yeah,
but they really just, and we've had that conversation off and on. I mean, we've exhausted ourselves trying to get to this, get this one little piece resolved. I mean, we've been working on condition 2 issues with the state since 2013, and we keep getting closer, and then we reach impasse, and then we had no progress and people forgot about it, and then we brought it back up, and then we reached impasse. And so now we just tried to segregate out the housing element of it, just so, this isn't really about building the house or the impact of the water. It's really about getting the financing done to get projects off the ground. Because if you've got a project funder and he's worried that there may be some sort of enforcement after the fact, once the water is actually on and proven, and now there's a violation of the CDO and there's enforcement, and you have to undo what's been done, or you can't lease half the units, then they're not going to make the financial commitment at the front end. So what we're trying to get is a commitment that they won't enforce, so a developer can put the money up to get going. It's really about that.
Okay.
But anyway, that's it. And then the next item that Lori has.
Before
greater
you
detail.
continue,
Yeah.
before you continue to the next item, John Tilley has his hand raised. So
yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm just letting the committee know that the second attachment to Lori's is the fuller legislative track, which includes a number of the same things that she just went over.
Yes, and it includes all the bills that we're going to be watching closely. But for the purpose of this committee, I wanted to get our position bills done first.
Yeah, and before we go to public comment, I also want to let you know that it's probably been a month, but Lori's given me a report on some of the funding programs at the state level through it's called the California Financing Council Funding Handbook, but it describes the current set of funding and grant programs that are out there. And so we're also perusing that, and we're about to enter another round of the integrated, IRWIMP, the Integrated Regional Water Management Planning Grant Round, which the district may not have a project in this next round, but we are not going to cede management of the program. So we again will be running it on behalf of our IRWM group for this next round. So we'll stay on top of that as well.
Okay.
And with that, we can go out to public comment.
Yeah, I'd just like to say before we do that, Lori, that I have read what you sent us. And I just want you to know that.
Oh, thank you.
That I do read it, and I do want the information. I just want you to know that it gets read.
Oh, I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go out to the public.
John, when you're ready, please present your comment. You need to push star 6. Yes, we could hear you.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Referencing the letter that was sent over to M1W around water supply. And when I've asked, for information on water supply from M1W before, I was just simply given the SEIR, which is not really that informative of the current situation of available water. It seems to me like the point I like to get to with M1W is that they can show me emphatically what rights they have water to contractually and the volumes of those waters historically. There's a super reliance being put on that supply project, and knowing what the right size of that project is, I think is critically important as we more fully build out a demand and supply report for our region. Honestly, I'm starting to use rainfall at a very, very low amount, and ASR I'm starting to put at 0 when I look at these things. And I just have, I think it's better to be conservative looking at water supply. I think it's important to remember that the water supply project was put in place when the CDO went in place with the State Water Resources Control Board, and that included the desal plant. And when the community decided to not pursue the desal plant, as far as I'm concerned, we basically reneged on our agreement with the State Water Resources Control Board. So expecting them to be a sympathetic party to our negotiations is asking a lot. Lastly, the comment that was just made about if you put up housing for, with 10 acre feet, thinking you had it, and you put up 120 units, and then later on you find you don't have enough water to support that, and you have to scale it back to half, is what I just heard. That is my deep concern for the hospitality industry on the peninsula. And when we get to rationing, we're going to be seeing hotels completely unable to provide rooms, that they will shutter a large portion of entire hotels due to rationing, and the economy will therefore suffer. This is a term that Jeff Davey and I called water poverty a couple years ago, and that is just the idea that there's not enough water on the peninsula to support the economy of the peninsula. Thank you for letting me comment.
Thank you, John. All right, let's move to our next item.
All right. Yeah, it'd be about 125 units, 10 acre feet. So the next item are some things that we actually, some of which we pulled into the federal discussion as well as the state discussion. But Exhibit 4 was that project description for the WRDA legislation. Exhibit 4B, the first letter, was the request for the WRDA legislation. The second letter was, or is, just a letter of support for the application we just did to the Bureau. That it went in under Monterey One Water through the Water Smart WIN Act. So the WIN Act was the Water Infrastructure and Innovation Act, but that was the Feinstein bill that became part of the Bureau Title 16 funding. So that's where we're trying to get another 10 million for the expansion of Pure Water Monterey. So that's just an FYI. The Exhibit 4C, I just wanted to use this as an example where we try to do the right thing for Aqua as a good Aqua member. And this is also where we get some cognitive dissonance, because Aqua is asking us to join the opposed unless amended. So this would be a letter of non-support, signing on with Aqua as a whole. But this is a bill that has no impact on us whatsoever. It's all about Bay Delta, sponsored by Representative Quirk. And so, my instincts are not to join in, because we don't have a dog in the hunt on Bay Delta issues. And this is both Bay Delta all the way up into the islands in the Delta area, as well as San Joaquin River has a whole set of environmental flows and so forth. So the bill itself is about the amending or finalizing and updating the 1995 water quality control plan for the Bay Delta and so forth. And so I just wanted to hear your thoughts on, who's our allegiance to Aqua as a member supporting the Aqua position, or should we keep our knitting here at home because we've got absolutely no actual interest in this bill? And I need to respond to Aqua probably this week if we were going to sign on, but I don't see the need to.
Yeah, no, I personally agree. Besides, I don't think that our taking a position on something like this, I mean, it doesn't have any weight.
No, it's just another logo and another name. Somebody counts up how many agencies. So.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Aqua can't help me with the state, so ain't no need of pushing. I'm one of those very independent ones. I might oppose the Aqua bill coming up the way we've been talking. So do what you think is best, and I think say we're not going to support it.
Yeah,
whatever.
Or we're not going to oppose it. We're not going to support it. We're just going to watch from the side.
There you go.
Yep.
Because we got other issues that we may have to address, and so that sounds good to me.
Very good.
Agreed.
I don't know if there's any public comment on item 4, but I'm ready to move on to item 5.
Before we do that, I just want to say, Dave, these 2 letters, exhibits in item 4, good letters, both of them.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
John, would you like to make public comment on item number 4? Chair Paul, I do not see any hands raised, so I'll return this back to the committee.
Thank you. Okay, next item.
Great. Item 5 is, it's interesting. I was looking at the county's legislative, draft legislative plan for the coming year, and it's 25 pages long, and a lot of discussion about in-depth discussion about cannabis tax and other other things that they want to stay on top of. Ours is more a roadmap of what we intend to do. And it looks a little bit like last year's with just some very minor tweaks. But I think it's always important to at least have the public see what it is we're doing, as well as have the board see what this committee has kind of instructed its staff to go do. And so this draft plan just kind of lays out what our federal strategy is for, or what I think it should be for the coming year, as well as California and then local. As I said, it's very similar, but it is updated a little bit to where we stand at the time. But unless there's some major changes, I'm just looking for this committee to allow me to bring it as an item on consent for the board.
That's fine with me. I do have just one or two questions, and one is about the very last thing on the proposed plan about better articulating CPUC activities to the public. It's probably a very good idea for us to do that. Are we just putting it with the legislative affairs plan because we need to put it somewhere and it fits?
No, it needs to be part of two other committees, but because it deals with either a government agency or, you know, occasionally we've gotten into, like when we passed the legislation for the desal plant funding, it was this committee that did all that because we needed the legislation, but yeah, it kind of cuts across. But I would be, sometime during this year, I need to have a discussion with the Water Demand Committee as to what it recommends to the full board as what the district's role should be with respect to rate cases and activities in front of the PUC, because we've, for decades, and before I got here, we've participated in the rate cases, we've advocated. So as an example, in 2013, you know, you'll hear residential ratepayer groups talk about some mysterious sweetheart deal that was cut with the commercial sector, and that they've got a real, you know, gravy train, and of course they have incentives to want a desal plant and so forth, which isn't completely true. It makes for good copy and good conversation, but you know, the way the PUC is set up is there's not supposed to be a whole lot of cross subsidization between commercial and residential and vice versa, and they look to that. And you know, the infrastructure of meter reading, when you've got 40,000 connections and 36,000 of them are residential, more of the meter reading and the meter readers and the distribution system, you know, it has a bigger residential component. Nevertheless, when we took the revenue requirement that's assignable to the commercial sector in 2013, the district was right there advocating for divisions rather than tiers. And I remember distinctly in person being in front of Commissioner Florio at the time, who said, well, of course, tiers don't work for the commercial sector. And, you know, by tiers, I mean that, you know, your fifth tier has a penalty rate that's very high. Your fourth tier is still pretty high and so forth. And there are disincentives for using higher amounts of water. And so the district fully participated in these divisions to create best management practice. Invested commercial gets lower rates because they spent $200,000, $300,000 on retrofits and so forth. So we do from time to time get very involved in large scale policy issues, but then from time to time we stand on the sidelines. So the San Clemente Dam as a regulatory asset and recovery through rates was something the district never weighed in on. And when we've gotten into the rate cases recently, we've drilled a little deeper on things than we have in the past. So at some point, I need Water Demand Committee to better define what we want to be in terms of a ratepayer advocate, or whether we even do want to be a ratepayer advocate relative to CalAm. I think that Measure J has changed that a little bit, which we may want to change our role. So anyway, a long way of saying that I'm not even sure what our role is supposed to be on all things CPUC, but once we decide what that is, then we need to better tell the public what we've been doing, because we've been doing a lot of really good stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, we called into question the surcharges in the last rate case. We called into question how acquisitions that have absolutely no impact on the Monterey district are paid in part by the ratepayers of Monterey. And, you know, there's things that we do that make a lot of sense that often don't get approved by the PUC. So at some point we need to then move that out. And you're right, it's not really just at legislative committee. It needs to get into the outreach committee to say, you know, what should we be saying and how should we be saying it?
Okay, so it sounds like there's two questions. There's what should the district's role be in these CPUC decisions going forward, you know, and you said that's something for the demand committee to discuss.
To recommend up to the board, and then board, how do we tell the public? Yeah.
Yeah, and then how do we explain what we're doing to the public? Yeah. So yeah. Two issues. Yeah, and I agree. It's for the board after the demand committee. And okay, meeting with. There's one thing in the plan. You know, there's a lot of references to meetings with the legislators and so on. It's not always clear to me who's going to do this. Is it our lobbyists, or is it us, or is it you by yourself, or you with a board member? And so anyway, you could maybe clarify offline. It's not, you know. Yeah,
and it's all of the above. So already Lori and John typically attend the Aqua. I think they're weekly meetings, but they're regular meetings. You know, not just on our behalf, but on behalf of all their clients who may have water interests. Mm. In the past, you know, pre-COVID, if we had a particular interest, we'd go up and I would go with John or with John and Lori, and we make the rounds to either our legislators or some other legislators who have an interest. And then when we have a particular interest, we would either provide brief testimony at the subcommittee, you know, at the committee level that are hearing a bill. And then at the federal level, and we haven't done that very often at the state level with board members. I think the only time we did was when Molly Evans went up with us on a trip. But at the federal level, we've done it both ways, and we've typically done it. So we've had many board members on some occasions. We've had, you know, meetings when we've had, I think at the most we had 4 board members back for Aqua DC. But when we were working really hard on some of the Title 16 work and some of the funding for Pure Water Monterey at the very nascent beginnings, we did it in concert with Monterey One Water, and they brought Ralph Rubio and we brought Dave Potter at the time. Mm. And so typically having a board member when we're working on specific legislation or specific ask is useful. Okay. Other times, you know, it's just staff, and we've done that as well. You know, Paul Shudo and I've gone to Bureau of Rec meetings, and we found out that not only did, oh gosh, his name's escaping me right now, but not only were there some West Coast connections to the undersecretary, but he was a Raiders fan. And so, you know, it devolved into Raider talk, and Paul can carry off Raider speak for, you know, a lengthy period of time, but it's all different ways. And so it'll depend on the ask, it'll depend on the time of year, but.
Okay. So we'll always, which is, I assume it'll be our practice to consider who is it best to send at the moment. Okay. And my last question, I don't know if they're from other directors, but regionalism in water, is that something you added this year?
I think we added it last year for the first time, even though we'd been doing it because it became more of a discussion point. George really pushed for it. And then obviously Mary now at the county level is pushing for it. We had already, I mean, boy, if you look at the story of Pure Water Monterey, it was already very regional. I mean, you know.
Well, just a comment. I mean, I think it is of heightened importance. It is important that we be in that discussion of regional planning and infrastructure investment. And frankly, statewide too. You know, these big long-term infrastructure investments, you gotta, you know, think maybe on another scale. So I hope we'll be paying attention to some of the statewide developments in investment of infrastructure too.
Yeah, and just so you all know, when Prop 1, which was the last big water bond, I think it was 2017, I forget exactly, but when that was passed, we served as a resource to Bill Monning, not in his local role, but he had a leadership position in the Senate. And he wanted to know what was up in there. There were about 7 sections, 7 pockets of money, and which ones would benefit the Central Coast, not which ones would benefit the district. And so we served kind of as his water liaison to read the bill and talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses. And, you know, I think we'll always be willing to serve in that role, you know, obviously for John Laird at this point and so forth, but you know, we try to stay involved. Yeah. So that's good suggestion.
Well, Dave, this is a good plan. My only reservation is about putting it on the consent calendar. You know how I feel about that consent calendar. This is sort of like an action item for me. So you really let the public know what you just told us. So they can, especially about the CPUC, you know, so you can explain to it. I think it shouldn't take you too long to do it. So if you can keep it off the consent, Chair and Dave, I appreciate that, because if it goes on consent, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull it.
All right.
Well, then why don't we just start with it on action?
Yeah. That's right. Start with it there. That way the public can get educated to what we're doing. So
yeah, and I'll highlight. Yeah, and if we do that, I'll also highlight some of the key elements, because I think what we've already done and what we're about to do with the earmarks, you know, it's important that people understand that we do spend some time doing these things. You know, that we're not just sitting around hoping for money to rain, you know, from the heavens. That we are proactive, and I think that's useful. So yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
So Joelle, you made a note that this will go on action.
Yes, action, right.
Action.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you.
Director Edwards and Director Malik, do you have additional comments before we take it out to the public?
I just have one for Dave. Dave, last night, Monterey 1 approved that 1.4 million that I think we approved. They talking about grant funding. If they get grant funding, they pay themselves back.
Right.
If they get grant funding, do they pay us back too?
Yeah, we have asked for some, and every time I bring it up, they go, "Yeah, we know."
Well, when we playing 75 to 25, you know, if we got to go legal with them on it, I want some of that money back.
Yeah,
they can go back to water supply, and we can do other things with them than when they asked us. So
yeah, we made that
talk about that later.
Yeah, no, but we are monitoring that situation. We've made that request, and I've told them, you know, the 19 million, to the extent you apply it to project costs, then everybody benefits. The goal was to build a project. But to the extent you start reimbursing, our reimbursement agreement with respect to the state revolving fund was very specific that it would be proportional. Now, grants are a little bit different than the state revolving fund, but philosophically it should be the same. So we should get something. I mean, you know, we agreed to fund deep injection well number 4, and they agreed to fund deep injection well number 3, which was a little bit different from our 75-25 cost sharing.
Yeah, I understand that, but
we're putting money in. If there's reimbursement to be had, we should get something, and they know that.
We could talk about that later. We let these consultants go; they tired.
Yeah.
We can talk about that on the 4th probably, but I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, and they get a little forgetful. So, you know,
well, we're going to find a way to remind them, because 75-25 last night, after hearing that, and I heard them talking about, well, we get that back in grant funding, our 25%. How about that 75?
Yeah.
That we're putting out there, and we're putting out more money. That's why I hammer on this. And we'll talk about it later, but we're paying more money and pay me, but don't ask nothing. So,
yep. No, and you know, some of these decisions were made before you came back on our board, Alvin. You know, and
yeah, I know, I understand that, but we can change a little. We can't change.
We should get a little something, because we also help draft those requests, and you know.
Well, thank you. Well, you know,
we provide grant writing services as well as everything else.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
right.
we actually share in those grant writing services, financially, and then we do the writing ourselves too. So no, it's understood. I just
sorry, Alvin, I cut you off.
No, I ain't got nothing else. So we'll talk about this later on, but it's going to come back up again. So.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Okay, I guess we need to check and see if there's any.
So if you would like to make public comment on item number 5, please raise your hand. Chair Paul, I'll return this back to the committee.
Okay, so then the only other thing we have is items for future committee agenda meetings. Anybody?
I have none.
Okay. Dave?
No.
Okay.
Unless we have a specific need or ask, all of these meetings kind of look the same, where we're just trying to keep you informed of some of the activities that are going on.
Yeah.
You know, kind of in the dark. So bring them up to light.
Right. Okay. Then we can adjourn. We'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks to our consultants, all of you, John, Chris, and Lori, who are still on, and Director Malik, yes, you wanted to just...
I would like to put a little more emphasis on the housing issue and how that impacts the water district. Because
more emphasis in terms of legislation, or...
Yeah, that's what we're here for. So we need to be more active with legislatively about, rather than us taking sort of a quiet or a negative attitude about it. We should be proactive, promoting housing.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and I will tell you, we've taken a couple of shots at it. John and Lori helped set up a meeting. Gosh, it's been about 1.5 years now, with both a housing subcommittee consultant and an aide to Nancy Skinner, who was a co-author of SB 300, which was the big housing bill in October of 2020, I believe it was, that declared the housing issue to be an emergency and a health and safety issue, thinking that they're big, strong housing advocates, they would take an interest in helping us. And, you know, in classic fashion, they sent us back going, well, you know, you should start with your local delegation, you know, to which you know, after the fact, we kind of said, gee, we didn't need tutoring and, you know, legislative outreach 101. You know, we already knew that. We were hoping for somebody else to step in, but the message is understood, and we've got to resolve this. And you look at the city of Monterey and what they're trying to do, and
yeah,
you know, state's trying to avoid it, avoid acting on it on the water side. They've tried to kick this can down the road, and these two issues are in conflict. The CDO and the housing, the RENA numbers, they're in conflict. And when the state, which it has, starts threatening the local jurisdictions with withholding state monies if they don't act on their housing allocations, and they can't act on their housing allocations because of water issues that were imposed by the state, you know, that's a problem. That's a real problem. And so we understand that. But as I've told Hans, and I've told Senator Laird, and I've told others, we're the water guys. We framed it from a water perspective. We brought housing over to the water board and said, this is a real problem, but we need the housing advocates to also get to the housing community development people. I know I've talked your ears off on this in the past, but we did our job, and the housing advocates haven't quite done their job. And that's why I kind of like the city of Monterey's letter, because that was them doing the housing advocates' job at a very profound level. You know, got everybody's attention. So that was good to see. I'm just not sure, you know, what good it's going to do with the state water board, but at least it raised the stakes, at least for the near term. You know, it's like a news cycle that if they can take it, maybe respond to it, maybe not, but then just kick it down the road, then it fades away again. So,
well, I think we all agree that housing is really important, and we desperately need more housing. And we have to somehow, you know, solve both problems, water and housing. I mean, It's not up to us to solve the housing problem, but, you know, do whatever we can do.
Yeah.
Which we've been trying to do, but I agree it's important. I think we all do.
All right, so we'll try also to make sure these meetings don't go on this long. So
yeah, I'm sorry about that. We did cover.
No, that's me. I talked too much, and also we had a little bit extra on this agenda than we normally do. So
yeah, it's been a long time since our last meeting. Okay, well, thanks to all of you. Again.
Thank you.
Have
all of them. All right.
Thank you.
See you Friday.
Bye-bye.
All right.